Okay, so it is episode 5, RuPaul's Drag Race UK girl groups. I know I look like a dump truck full of hot mess, but I have been sick for a week, and it is just killing me a little bit more every day. So I could watch the episode. So I'm going to kind of reiterate something I said in the last recap, which is, I probably said it every time, which is they don't have a prize. So, like, fighting to win the actual prize, but fighting to win more episodes in the heart and minds of America and the UK are important. Especially, I don't know a lot about the drag scene in the UK versus America, but my guess is, just based on population, there's a lot of opportunity in America. And so, I don't know what percent of people are watching the show. What the viewership is, any of that, but my guess is that the #1 prize is going to be getting booked over in the US for like Drag Race super fans who watch it. Anyway, so we have the whole thing where Cheryl Hole is like blah blah blah, and then Crystal and Baga and Vivian like, oh well, you guys are just talking over, you need to just back off. Now I get, like I said, I did not like Baga and Vivian as much in the last episode because I just kind of feel like the definition of kind of mean girls is like if they have everything, they're nasty to everyone else. If they're at the bottom, it's like seen as scrappy, but if you're not, although that's not always the case because there's been plenty of people who've been in the bottom who've been mean that have just gone out the door. But anyway, I feel like the editors saw the same things I did, which is to really have a compelling story, you have ups and downs. And this is true. I was just talking about this with story structure, the hero's journey. You know, you go up, you go down, and you have, it makes that final win. So if you just have that storyline where it's like, just, I'm pretty good to start with and I just get better, it's not really compelling. It happens, but like they said, someone was doing an analysis of the different seasons, and they were saying like Violet Chachki winning is not as satisfying as like a Jinx Monsoon, or there was a story about Alaska winning All-Stars 2, which is if Alaska hadn't had that big stumble and trip right before the end, and that breakdown of vulnerability, might not have won, because it wasn't as compelling a story. Anyway, I don't know if that's the case, but I feel like what we see in this episode is a counterpoint to what we saw in episode 4. Right, where I was like, gosh, you know, they're kind of on top, they're just, it's kind of almost obnoxious, I'm not really as into them, and this episode kind of fixes that. So I feel like where I was in episode 3 and where I finished with episode 5, we're kind of back on the same. Okay, so the reading challenge, Crystal wins. These are always, to me, unless it's like a Bianca Del Rio or someone who's just really amazing or really, really bad, they all kind of seem good because they don't show every single read. And I don't want them to. I don't want to see the terrible flops. I want to see the good ones. I imagine it takes them like 45 minutes to do the full thing. If not, maybe less. But too long. We'll just say it's too long for me to watch the whole thing. So Crystal wins. Crystal gets to pick the group, picks Vivian and Cheryl. So I think if we were to kind of be objective, kind of a top, and I won't say Cheryl's a bottom, but if you were, anyway, gets a singer, gets a funny. So they all go in. Vivian can sing. Cheryl was really funny. They worked with an artist who's over in the UK I'm not familiar with, but kind of gave us a good, helped me get kind of a judge as to how they were doing. Crystal kind of went like, and then Baga, Blue, and Davina. Davina had that whistle, like, whistle tone. Blue really, I think better. I think I wrote better than ever. And Baga was pretty good. And their Filth Harmonies, I think is what I said. And Frock Destroyers. Baga, Blue, and Davina made their costumes, or at least made something to like do a reveal. To me, these like in the studio is always a little hard for me to kind of get a good judge on, so I go just off of the performance. So Crystal, Vivian, and Cheryl were okay. And then Baga, Blue, and Davina were much better. The song was a little bit catchier, but the biggest thing to watch is the judges panel laughed a lot more. In that, my goodness, excuse me. In the middle of that, they talk a little bit about bullying and being kids. And Davina has a pretty heart-wrenching bullying. I think anybody who isn't touched by bullying stories, like, has a heart of stone, because kids they should be so innocent. It should be a time, the stuff that we believe about ourselves when we're in school carries with us through the rest of our life. We have so fewer options. I don't know that I could go back to school, like, even as an adult, you know, having to go from subject to subject, and, like, you don't like half of them. You know, maybe you're forced to work with people who are mean to you. I don't know. I kind of feel like if you're not touched by those kind of stories, but of course I worried. I'm like, oh no, is Davina going home? Anyway, it's day at the races. So Vivian had a big hat, all that. I thought she looked better than they thought she did. Cheryl, sorry, my child drew all over it. Crystal had the kind of the gimp mask and stuff. To me, they were like, I don't really get how it is the races. To me, and they even make a reference to it, it's the My Fair Lady when she goes to the races and she has that black and white dress with that huge hat, but it was like reimagined as a cat suit. So I kind of really got where it was, but I think, I'm not going to say that the judging wasn't fair so much as I think some of it was played a little bit for more storyline. So I think Vivian looked better than they said she did because they kind of wanted to rattle her cage a little. And of course she responded with some real vulnerability, which I reacted to. Oh, and I would say that once you got Vivian and Baga into two separate teams, I found both of them more interesting. And I think there's a certain degree, like Relaska Talks, I didn't like any of them when they were in Relaska Talks. I found it, and I think that's exactly part of the, I shouldn't say exactly why Jinx won, because Jinx was very strong, but I think that was a lot of that playoff, which is you have these three uber strong competitors, and you have this one kind of fighting against the rest of the group, the scrappy winner. I knew as a viewer, I think that helped me really cheer for Jinx. So come back here, we have Vivian and Baga when the two of them are like, we're so much better than all of you. It's not, I don't like it. When they're separated and they're part of a group, it's certainly not a lot more interesting. When Vivian's saying how much she respects everybody else and how strong they are and how upset she is to have let Rue down, a billion times more interesting to me than, I'm so awesome, I'm so great, I have all these Rue pins, you know, I don't get 5,000 or whatever for winning. I don't get any real prizes, but I do have this pin. So, to me, I'm not going to make it sound like if the judging was unfair. I just think, I don't know. Take me at what I'm saying. So then Cheryl, they said she really broke out. She was really interesting. Of course, she's like, oh, I love girl groups. And then Crystal, like I said, she had the outfit that I felt was by My Fair Lady. But I feel like in a way they had to be a little bit more critical because they had to justify that Vivian and Crystal are in the bottom. And it makes sense. When I had seen a spoiler that Cheryl went home, and so I was kind of glad that I didn't ruin it for me. So Baga had a hat kind of wig. I don't know why, but it reminded me of the classic British sitcom, Have You Been Served? It reminded me of something that, I can't think of her name, that would have the blue or the apricot hair, would wear thinking it was super fashionable. It felt very mumsy, campy, but Britishy, so I really liked it. They said he had a good voice, and once again, they said we saw a little bit more vulnerable. So to me, this was a lot about either in the editing room, because they have the ability to pull whatever footage, or even just kind of like knocking people back. I feel like this episode was really about redeeming Vivian and Baga from being a little too much a shoo-in. Blue came out, had a horse's head. They said, we saw a new side of Blue, and then Davina had, I kind of think it's interesting because they didn't really reference the fact that some of what she was wearing was fetish wear, like horseplay and stuff, and so she just kind of had like the bit in her mouth, and look like a jockey and have the boots that they're almost like cloven hooves. They don't have a heel, but they have a lot of weight in the toe. Anyway, did make a comment on her makeup, which I'm glad. I mean, and I think a lot of that comes from what works in a, they have the opportunity to step it up. They do it the same way. Of course, they're really well lit versus like a dark, supposedly bar or whatever they normally perform. So anyway, they go back, everyone's, totally shook, and Cheryl like interrupts to be like, I just love girl groups so much, which I found kind of funny, like eye rolly, but not in a like I dislike you kind of way, but more in like a, of course. So Bag of Blue and Davina are all winners. I'm like, is this a competition to see how many, for the first time ever, all of you are winners. I thought we don't have to give out prizes, so just give out as many, I assume you bought like 50, give them all out. So anyway, so now they've had a double win, now they have a triple win. Next week it's like you all win. Anyway, Crystal and Vivian go, and I kind of knew Crystal was going to go home. Vivian had been winning. I thought it was a reasonably good, I mean, it wasn't like the best lip sync I've ever seen, but it was a little bit higher energy than some of the other ones this season. I'll say that it's clear that UK queens aren't huge lip syncers. So anyway, I really liked Crystal. I wish I could have seen more of her, but they started with a lot fewer queens, so we're like dropping out a lot faster. So we're now at 5, which means if my guess is right, they're going to be at 8 episodes total, and then we'll be done, and that's crazy. So anyway, hit me up in the comments.